hello to all friends of the Consciência a Serviço do Ser channel. Another episode of We Are All One, Conversation from the Heart. With great joy and pleasure, we will have today a visit from a great friend of many years called Adalberto Rabelo Bueno. Good evening, Marco. Good afternoon, good night, good morning to anyone watching at any time of day, Adalberto. Good evening, Marco. Nice to participate here on your channel. A hug to Sarah too, to the listeners and or viewers to be more precise. Yeah, the internet is multidisciplinary. Someone might be listening to this video in their car and listening, and they might be watching it on their cell phone or whatever. Yes, there's no problem at all. Adalberto, he's a civil servant, and each of us has a profession and is also a practical student of self-knowledge. And those of you who follow the channel know how important it is to put teachings into practice. It is through practice that consciousness manifests itself in us, awakens, takes control of our lives, and transforms what needs to be transformed in us. After all, we are consciousness, although we have a lot of darkness within us, due to ignorance, due to lack of knowledge. But this is an opportunity we will have because Adalberto is going to talk a little about a great Tibetan Lama who is considered perhaps one of the most wronged by the traditional media, and, well, we will talk about him. Several books edited and published in a huge effort to deliver to the West and to the entire world knowledge that previously reserved for the walls of Tibetan monasteries. And the name of that Lama is Lobsang Rampa. Yes, very good. How did this dedication to knowing and studying come about in you? Tell us a little of your story in relation to your initial knowledge, and how did you approach or come across Lobsang Rampa books, Adalberto? Yes, look, it's interesting. When I was a kid, I was at a neighbor's house for a birthday party, and I wasn't one to go through people's drawers, like even more. I arrived at the house there and I opened actually it was a cupboard door under the television like that. And there was the third guy, which was his first book. And I thought that was strange, but as a 5-year-old child, I looked at that cover like that with an eye in the center of the forehead, right? I think that a lot of people who like esotericism have already seen that cover, right? The book is here. Just now was this cover here. And I looked at this cover. I thought, actually, this one is a more updated version of the cover, but it was the same image. And I asked the owner of the house, what is this? And since I was a child, I saw that people... and he said he was an author who talked about the spiritual and such. Then when I lived for a while in Minas Gerais, there in Contagem, in a bookstore, I bought the
Tibetan Sage,
which was his last book from 1980. And then I find out that it had passed away, this author. But then I started reading it, and it took me a while to read it, but I liked it. Then I started buying. That was around 98. Then I started reading. Each book I read made me more interested, and it was astral projection techniques that I used. I did the techniques he taught, as other authors have other techniques, and I also tried them, and they worked, even when I was applying one of his techniques. I'll tell you a story that's quite interesting, that I was also trying to be in myself present in my day-to-day life. And then I dreamed that I was going to work. When I was through the bus turnstile, my clothes were left to one side and I found myself naked in the middle of the bus. At that moment, my consciousness was shocked, and I realized that I was in the astral and the dimension of dreams. And I remembered that Rampa taught that here sometimes when you see yourself naked, that's when something will happen. Some kind of dislike, some kind of fight in your life. And then I imagined the clothes, and it was like I was diving into a pool like that. And the clothes covered me. And I realized, well, if I'm going to work and dream, right? Yes. Now that I knew that, it was that was in the astral world and the dimension of dreams. I think that those who follow your channel are familiar with these terms. And then I flew out of the bus window and I went to see what was going on at work. Then I got to work and asked someone who was there in the astral part, "What is happening?" And then he says to me, "Look, be careful with another colleague there. That colleague is getting rid for his colleague's life." And he actually had a spreadsheet like that, which he wanted to be signed. He wanted, well, what happened was that the next day, that colleague went into a room and I went out through another. He went in through one door and I went out through another. When I saw him coming down the hallway, I would leave, get some water, or go to the bathroom. And the colleague asked, "Hey, but are you avoiding that person?" "Sure not. But this person is like a dizzy cockroach. She's always wanting to talk to someone." Well, I don't know anything. I played crazy. And sure enough, she took this person, took several colleagues to another sector and in fact, something that was bad for them, unpleasant. And I got rid because of the astral, them having, I had that warning there. Yes, and every Rampa book I read, I saw more things like that, that helped with the unfolding and in the person's life, in everyday life too. He has very interesting tips. He has a meditation technique. I've even translated a meditation disc that he made. I've translated a book too. I've acquired the rights from the American publisher. This one here at the back. Wait. Yeah, let's go in parts. In parts we'll get there. Let me tell you something. Am I wrong? Or are 17 books? 19 plus these. Now there are 19. No. Now there are 20 with these articles compiled into a book. 20, okay. Actually, it's not his book or a posthumous book. Yes, We'll talk about the book later, but let's start in part. That came out when he was alive, but since he wrote it for a magazine and it was published as a book without authorization, he didn't like it very much. And even because of the theme about extraterrestrials, as that time a visit to Venus. Then people didn't, maybe even because he was afraid of not being believed, he decided he didn't want them to publish it. Yes, but anyway, wait, let's go. So there are 20 books now. For those who don't know the background, for example, what you said about meditation disc, for anyone to understand, at the time it was released on LP, those big vinyl records he published, which was the way to transmit the audio. There was no internet. And he sold these records which taught people how to meditate. And you also actually, I think, translated it, didn't you? You translated an audio in Portuguese, like I do with Eckhart Tolle. I dub interviews, any material that isn't... If it's protected by copyright, I can't publish, so I dub it. I put a still image and there's no problem. It's my voice. I don't need to borrow it from anyone. So you publish the meditation disc on your channel, including the people who know the channel here. Our channel. There's a video to promote this record, okay? So, for those who don't know, I can then put later in the video description some information from Adalberto's channel, okay? One of them will be the link to meditation disc with Adalberto's voice, which is the literal transcription of Lobsang Rampa's teachings. This comes first, for everyone to know. Of course, later we'll put other information and we'll talk more about it during the interview, okay? One thing that draws attention in the story, you must know it much better than I do, is that at the beginning of our chat, I said that is one of the greatest victims of injustice. It's almost like Master Samael A1VO says in some work. You can even look there later to see if this quote is correct. In the work The Perfect Marriage, he is considered a martyr. Yes, he says he was a great martyr of the century, just like Madame Blavatsky. Blavatsky took charge of bringing a good part of the knowledge from India and published a book called Secret Doctrine under the guidance of two masters, Moria and Kutumi, and with her own hands she wrote the book. It is not psychographic. This book was dictated to her in the inner world, in the astral world, and that is why she said it was the book written in 6 hands, because she couldn't say she owned that knowledge, because they were transmitting it in the best way. And then the Secret Doctrine was published. She crossed to Russia and came to Europe alone at a very young age. She ran away from home because her parents wanted to marry her to a Russian nobleman. But she didn't accept the life she was leading. She came to Europe and met Colonel Scott later. And with that, she founded the Theosophical Society, based on the Secret Doctrine, a very extensive book in which she delivers Vedic wisdom. Lobsang Rampa, in the same way, fulfilled the mission to leave Tibet, visiting several countries as a doctor trained in Lhasa. And for those who didn't realize, right, Adalberto? Oh, Otala. Hey, there's the image of Lhasa in Tibet. Uh-huh. And there's nothing else, right? Yes, there's just one thing left for appearance's sake. Yeah, I'll even make a comment with you later. We saw a recent documentary about Tibet. It's quite interesting. Well, just to finish here, just to pick up on that, so he served as a doctor in China, right? World War II. And he was imprisoned by Japan, by the Japanese Empire, and tortured barbarically. He says that the most worst torture he suffered was at the hands of the Japanese Empire. After that, he crossed over and went to Russia